Huntsville Times just ran a story about the high cost of selling a home, and they quoted a survey by Clever Real Estate that home sellers spend an average of $54,000 to sell their homes. But before we jump into that, make sure you hit subscribe below and also like the channel to stay on top of all the latest Huntsville, Alabama real estate news. The $54,000, that seems like an astronomical number. Was that just clickbait or was that good journalism from the Huntsville Times? I'll say the Huntsville Times does an amazing job for our local area, and it is easy to take data from Clever Real Estate or anywhere else and just regurgitate and report that data back to our local market. As you all know, the Huntsville market, every real estate market is different, and the fees associated with transacting in real estate are different for each and every market. So what the Huntsville Times should have done is they should have contacted us to help break these numbers down and see if they are a true representation of selling a home in the Huntsville market. And I'll say, unfortunately, not all the numbers are accurate, but let's kind of jump into them line by line. The first one, the big one, is a real estate commission. It was probably a good representation of our market, kind of an average price point of a $360,000 or so home, which is close to the median and the average price range home in Huntsville, Alabama. So that particular number was accurate. Real estate commission is getting a lot of heat in the US with different settlements and different lawsuits out there. I will say I have really traveled the globe here in the last few weeks. I've been to a couple different countries looking at investment properties. Our model and our process here in the US is far superior than other countries that I've visited. For one, we have a functioning MLS system. Of the two countries that I went to, one had an MLS but wasn't really functioning, had some data, but really missing the majority of the data that was out there. And the other one didn't have an MLS at all. And the reason that's important as we're starting to talk about commissions is it's really difficult to know that you're paying the right price without a benchmark of an MLS to be able to look at a market analysis for the home. And so the commissions in the US far outweigh the price of what I could potentially overpay in another market if I was taken advantage of by an agent that was not giving me accurate data. Also in these countries, both of them had comparable commission rates, and they were also still paying buyer representation, which is something that is now being decoupled. A lot of sellers are still paying that on the seller side, but it was still baked into the system like it was here in the US. So long story short is the Huntsville Times did get it right on real estate commissions for this article. And I will say we have actually taken a step back from the rest of the world by decoupling those commissions, because it is something that is still being made an easier process in other parts of the world. The next thing is the repair cost, an average of $10,000. I would argue number one is that the repair cost really is just bringing up the home to market value. You don't have to make repairs on a home. That just lowers the value of the home. And if you're gonna make a repair cost, in this case, average of $10,000, you need to be working with a real estate agent that gives you the advice. Okay, if I invest $10,000, am I gonna get an extra at least $10,000, maybe $15,000 or $20,000 off the price of the home? The repairs is really just normal wear and tear. And that's gonna be subject to whoever's living in the home. How long have you lived in the home? And did you make repairs throughout living in the home, or is this all deferred maintenance? So I don't think this is really seller cost. This is just part of home ownership, and it's really part of investing and getting top dollar for the home. And so if you're gonna take off $10,000 for repairs, I think you also gotta add back, okay, well, you got an extra $20,000 on the list price because of the extra repairs that you made. So again, I don't think this is something that should have been included as part of that $54,000, which is one of the reasons I think this is kind of a clickbait type article. Let's jump into the next line item, which is closing costs. Closing costs are definitely location specific, whether state or country. In Huntsville, Alabama, particularly the board contract that we use in our area, seller's responsible for three things. One of those we've already covered, which is commissions. The other two are pretty small items. One is half a title insurance. On that example of about a $360,000 home, you're looking somewhere around $750, $800. And then you also have a dock prep fee, which is around $125. So both those fees are about, less than $1,000 on average. So much, much less than the $8,000 that is estimated here, because the commissions were already factored in the first line item. Now, other states are gonna be different. Other states have different closing costs. Now, I will tell you, I've transacted in other states where that $8,000 may not even be enough because they have additional taxes and fees associated with transacting on the home. But some of these states may not have state income taxes, where Alabama does have state income taxes. And so it's a little bit of a trade-off between which taxes you're going to pay. Ultimately, the government is going to get their taxes regardless of how they describe it. They're going to get it one form or the other. The other thing too, I was talking about different states, different countries as well have drastically different closing costs. I mentioned a couple of the countries that I recently traveled to. One of them had an 8% basically tax up front when you purchase a home, and then your attorney fees were around 2%. So you're looking at 10% of the total purchase price on buying a home. And ultimately, the buyer can't afford to buy the home because of those fees. Oftentimes those fees can come back down to the seller. Again, closing costs are location dependent. $8,000, if our local newspaper would have done their homework, would have known that $8,000 is way too high, which helps make this, unfortunately, more of a clickbait article and not 100% accurate in that $54,000. So the next item was the concession of $7,200. I would argue that this is just helping you get to the actual market value of the price. That's really not a seller fee. It's something that's just helping you get the overall additional market value of the home. So again, a little misleading adding that in there. So next one is moving expenses, $3,250. I think that's probably a good representation on an average. Could be anything from buying your buddy some pizza on a cross-town move to, if you're moving to another state, $3,250 is probably not going to get you very far. So definitely part of moving. Now the next one is really kind of a head scratcher, marketing at $2,300. You should not be paying for any marketing if you're hiring a competent agent. You know, I will say, we talked about some other countries, not the two countries I visited, but I have heard of other countries where you are responsible to pay some of your own marketing expenses up front. But here in the US, I don't hear of that very often. So definitely adding to kind of the clickbait-ish portion of the article here, so helping inflate that number to $54,000. The next and really the last item was home staging of $2,263. Again, depending on the market that you're in, you know, I will say most sellers do not get home staging, and I personally have not had any clients invest $2,263 in home staging. So for that to be the average, again, inflating the number. Typically, if you're gonna hire a home stager, it's to come in and help place the furniture, get everything where it needs to be. If it's empty for a $360,000 home, typically doesn't make sense to fully stage that home to be able to recoup that expense in terms of a higher dollar expense. And so most people that do very, very light staging. So $2,263 again is overkill, just really helping hype up that $54,000. Again, you know, if I'm a seller, it cost me $54,000 to sell a home, I'd have regrets too, and I probably wouldn't want to be looking at selling my home. Fortunately for you all in Huntsville, Alabama, that number was severely overinflated and just not a real number in our market. So the other thing that this article quoted was, they said that the overwhelming majority of home sellers now want buyers to pay their own agent fees, and this is a result of the settlement. In reality, that's not what we're seeing in practice. We're seeing a majority of the sellers paying buyer agent fees. Now, do most sellers want to pay those fees? Absolutely not. They don't want to pay that fee. They don't want to pay any fee that's out there because, you know, they're trying to net the most money, but what they're realizing is to net the most money and to achieve their goals of selling their home, they're willing to attract additional buyers by paying buyer agent fees. In reality, most sellers are also buying a home as well. That scenario where they don't pay a buyer agent fee, but then they have to pay their own fee on the next home, that is either a wash or could actually be something that they're paying more of, especially if they're a move-up buyer and they're selling a less expensive home and buying a more expensive home as well. So again, most people don't want to pay fees, but they want to pay fees when the value is greater than the fee that they're paying. And that's what sellers are seeing in this marketplace right now. The next quote from this article is a little bit of a head scratcher. It said 2/3 of the people believe that AI could outperform human agents. Well, of course, it really, I guess it depends on what you mean by outperform, but of course, if you're talking about just data crunching, you know, computers can give you all the facts, all the data. They don't need sleep, and they can spit it all out to you, all the data that you could ever imagine instantly. So of course, computers and AI can do that better. than real estate agents. However, people don't hire real estate agents just to spit out data. They hire real estate agents for the human element, the empathy, helping interpret the data based on their situation, on knowing the particular areas and all the complex variables that come into play and all the human factors that come into play as well, to help decide and help determine which home is the best fit for that particular client. And so yes, AI can interpret more data, but you hire humans for a reason, for that emotional side of things, and then also being the interpreters of the data to help give you an edge in the marketplace. All right, let's look at the last quote from the article. 88% of agents think commission changes will discourage first-time buyers from entering the market. Now, if sellers stop paying buyer agent commissions for first-time home buyers, I definitely think it would discourage first-time home buyers. However, that's not what we've seen in the marketplace yet. And if that happens, that will be a terrible thing, not only for first-time home buyers, not only for our economy, but really for our nation as a whole. And the reason I say that is our middle class is really under attack right now. You look at the economy and everything that's being put out there, and it's really all averages. So everything looks good, but in reality is what's happening is you've got a certain set of people that own assets and they're doing extremely well, but then you've got another set of folks that don't own assets and they're really struggling in this marketplace. And so what that's doing is that is shrinking the middle class, and that is a huge issue and challenge in our country right now, because 40 times the net worth is what homeowners have versus renters. You build that net worth through home ownership, not through renting. And if you have people that are now lifetime renters, that is going to continue to shrink the middle class. And that is not a good thing for our country. And that is really one thing that has been kind of the bedrock of our country, is having a strong middle class. So home ownership is needed. And if that were to come true, that's going to be a terrible ramification of this commission settlement. And I think that will get overturned. But for now, I haven't seen that happen. So first-time home buyers are still entering the marketplace. Interest rates are starting to come down. And I think you're going to see a resurgence of first-time home buyers entering the marketplace in 2025 as affordability continues to improve. Now, one thing I think most Huntsvillians will agree that the article did get right is that Huntsville is still coming up in the top 10 places to live in the US. Now, if you're listening to this video and you have not made your move yet to Huntsville, Alabama, and you'd like to get more information on our area, a private tour, or have any questions about buying your first home in Huntsville, Alabama, you can contact us at 256-333-MOVE.